Back, fellow football fanatics. I apologize for the late delay. Sometimes things just happen, but we're here, so I want to get the ground running. Today we're going to be talking about my new top 25, my new college football playoff bracket, my Big Ten power ratings, and record predictions. And also just reacting to some things in week 2 that I found interesting. Some things that I covered on Saturday, early Sunday that I want to touch on again, and then 2 games that I wanted to cover and I just couldn't get to in these previous 48 hours. It is going to be a packed show. I do understand, though, that I was like 50 minutes late, but hopefully we can get a lot of you in here. And as always, we will get to super chats during the breaks. But before we get started with anything, well, I see a lot of you are flooding in here. That's very encouraging. I do want to announce a new sponsor for the channel. We were supposed to get him in here last week, and by that I mean I was supposed to shout him out last week, but I was sick. I just didn't want to rush anything. But now, second week of September, I want to thank Chris Gates for sponsoring this channel. Chris Gates is a fitness expert, and today, because I don't have a lot of time on my hands, I worked out for one of the first times in a while, and I used one of his workout programs that he has, cooked up in his lab, and it was very effective. It was brief. It gave me a good pump. I used to work out very regularly, and I went from being a very skinny, scrawny kid in high school to being able to deadlift over 400 pounds and be relatively strong for my weight. And I do want to get back there one day. And I will tell you, based off of these workouts that are quick, that are efficient, and that are at a very low cost per month, especially for the first month of signing up using the link that I have posted in the pinned comment in this live show, and that will be posted in the live description, in the description of all of my future videos, and in the pinned comment of my live show and my future videos as well, for as long as he sponsors us here, and hopefully for a long time. That is chrisgatesfitness.com/collegefootballwithsam/ sign up, join today. It's an online fitness monthly membership. He's a coach, and he's also a big football fan. I saw that he has a Pittsburgh Panthers flag hanging in his gym, and the Pittsburgh Panthers right now, they are 2-0, just had a comeback win over Cincinnati. You also get to join a Facebook group, and there's so much to look into. We're obviously all big college football fans on here, and if you have health and fitness goals, Chris Gates, I think, is the guy for you. His training camp is a monthly fitness program designed specifically for football fans. It's nothing that I have ever seen before personally. I don't even know of too many fitness people, honestly, in my life who are football fans at all. And if they do, they watch it very casually. But that's probably not everyone. He's been coaching people for a couple of years. Again, massive college football fan. And he's created a community in training camp that blends fitness and sports together to help you achieve your goals while connecting with a community of sports fans doing the same thing. Training camp is here to help you, whether you've struggled to stay consistent in the past or whether you've been confused. He's a great coach. He'll explain everything for you, and you'll get top-notch coaching. He'll deliver monthly workout plans to help you remove any type of guesswork, and his training website does have videos on, instructing you how to do different workouts and stuff. I bet you guys will enjoy it a lot if you do choose to sign up. You'll join the private online community as well, where members support each other and they participate in challenges, win prizes, or more. Again, sign up at chrisgatesfitness.com/collegefootballwithsam, or hit the link in the description to sign up and use code SAM to get that discount. That's 80% off of what is typically $50 a month, and it's just $10 for your first month. So Thank you to Chris Gates Fitness for sponsoring this channel. I look forward to working with him for this college football season. And we'll see where all of that goes. So, just want to get that out of the way, because when you're sponsored, you have to put it out there. You do. And thank you for all of you in the comment section. Yeah, tonight was a late start, but we have over 20 concurrent viewers. Hopefully we'll get more as everything continues. Make sure to like the stream, click that subscribe button if you haven't already, hit the notification bell, share this video, this stream around, and be active in the chat. We will get to super chats during breaks. What I want to start out with, oh my gosh, Ryan Day's beard. See, this right here is why you always have fun with college football, is you have accounts called Ryan Day's beard that I will always think that name is just objectively hilarious, and I think it is. If you don't find that to be funny, you're insane. Every time I see that account, I don't even know what his name is, but every time I see that account, I want to like reply or read the whole comment just because the profile picture and the name, and that really is what advertising is all about. That's what advertising is all about. Same with the difference between a guy who looks like a homeless man and you put the same guy in a suit coat and give him a haircut, and people think he's a different person, even if he objectively isn't. Speaking of that, really, what I just described to you are what several football teams are. They are liars. They are, shoot. I don't know why I flipped to that there, and now everything's going insane. So pardon me with all of this. We're just kind of having an off night here, but we'll get everything on track. Where I wanted to go with this ultimately was the fact that there are a lot of college football teams. Yes, I'm my own producer, so you're going to get errors from time to time because I'm my own producer here on the show. There are several college football teams that are bums, that are not good, that are disguised as good, that have deceived both you and I in week one. Some of them right now are still deceiving us. What I will say is, with all of this, and yes, I know you guys did see some stuff with all of that, but just ignore that. I want to start out with Arkansas against Oklahoma State, an overtime game. Arkansas deceived a lot of people because they put up 70 points on Arkansas Pine Bluff, which is closer to even a D2 school than an FCS school. 39-31 in overtime. Arkansas nearly doubled Oklahoma State's total yardage. And that's impressive because Oklahoma State had 385 total yards. Arkansas had 648. And they were only -2 in the turnovers. And they were +12 on first downs. And an Ollie Gordon team with a great offensive line, lost the time of possession battle by 13-14 minutes. So how did this happen? Well, it happened due to something called poor coaching, due to poor execution, poor finishing. The fact that Arkansas basically turned it over 5 times. They were 0 of 2 on fourth down. They had 3 turnovers, a pick thrown by Taylon Green, a fumble by Isaiah Satenga, a fumble by Jaquindon Jackson, and boom, there you have it. Oklahoma State was 1 of 2 on fourth down. They struggled on third down, being 5 of 16, but Arkansas was 11 of 19 on third down. Arkansas is that team that deceives you, or I. They didn't deceive me, though. I wasn't able to get to this in my week 2 previews, but I picked Oklahoma State to win in my mind. I was very nervous at halftime, but they thankfully pulled out. Arkansas, they're going to fire Sam Pittman. because I don't think Oklahoma State would even be a above average team in the SEC if you were to power rate the SEC. I don't think that at all. In fact, I don't think Oklahoma State is certainly a top 20 team right now, maybe not even top 25, top 30. They've struggled running the ball with an elite running back in Ollie Gordon. Alan Bowman, we know for a fact, is not some great quarterback. I mean, Oklahoma State ran 26 carries, 59 yards, 2.3 yards per rush, and they had 2 rushing touchdowns with a long rush of 12. And Arkansas only had 3 TFLs, so it's not like they were getting behind Oklahoma State's line of scrimmage. It's not like they were sacking Alan Bowman to death, so then when you sack adjust the rushing yards, it was deflated. No, they just couldn't run the football. They had to rely on Alan Bowman with 48 passing attempts and threw to 26 yards to pull them back into the game, and then they won in overtime, 39-31. And the reason it's 39-31, not 38-31, is because both teams missed a field goal, I'm pretty sure, in the first overtime. And then Oklahoma State got a touchdown, 2-point conversion in the second overtime, and Arkansas just whiffed. 1-1. This was a critical, necessary win for Sam Pittman. And he couldn't win. He just did what everyone has viewed Arkansas as for really the past year or two. They choked. They choked what should have been a good win, a ranked win. They outgained, again, Oklahoma State by over 200 total yards, and they lose. That's bad coaching. And Arkansas, being in the SEC, and there has been success there before when current offensive coordinator Bobby Petrino was their head coach, they will get candidates. Believe me on that one. It won't be like Texas A&M or Ohio State or Texas or Georgia, Alabama, Michigan, USC. It won't be like that when there are job openings. But Arkansas, I think, is a better job than most Big 12 jobs at this point. Better than a lot of ACC jobs. It's tough, yeah, but you got SEC money. You're in the South. You have the Southern pipelines and recruiting grounds to your advantage, and Arkansas has won before. So why can't they win again? They clearly have a talented team right now, and if they just had a better coach, a much better head coach, and better assistant coaches, they could be not a threat for the SEC championship, but they could contend with a lot of teams in the SEC. Yeah, Sam Pittman's done, and I will leave it at that. Up next, we have Michigan's offense. Michigan's offense sucks. I rewatched part of the film from Michigan, Texas, and I also thought more about that game over the past 48 hours. And I made some comments in the reaction and analysis where I said I still think Michigan's offensive line is good. It's just when you have no passing offense, you're going to get opponents stacking the box, and they're going to jam your offensive line. Your rushing attack won't be that effective unless it's legendary, and Michigan does not have a legendary rushing attack. Well, I don't think the O-line is terrible for Michigan, but it's certainly Michigan's worst over the past 4 seasons by a long shot. I'm looking at Giovanni El-Hadi. I am looking at Gudis or Crippen, whoever plays at center. I am looking at Miles Hinton. I'm looking at the entire offensive line, and there are missed block assignments. There's clearly inexperience. Texas didn't sack Davis Warren more than one time, but they many times were only rushing 3 or 4 guys forward. They knew that Davis Warren was going to struggle passing the football, and that his receivers were not going to do a good job of catching the football. That, plus the Colston Loveland fumble, plus Davis Warren throwing a pick, nearly throwing a second, and whenever Alex Orji was in the game, Texas knew what the play was because Michigan has no confidence in his ability to pass the football, and Michigan is just like, hey guys, we're going to motion a running back like to Orgy's left, and we're going to hope that that takes your linebacker's attention off the fact that all we've ever done with Orgy is just either run the read option or we power him up the middle. That game plan and that execution sucked. Michigan has wasted through 2 games great talent on offense. It's not elite. It's not even near elite. But I think the offense, if managed properly, could at least be good or serviceable. It's looked awful for 2 games. The defense is a whole nother story that I think I'll cover in a video later this week when I look at Michigan's whole team. But really, in this football game, when you can't pass until the second half, your identity on offense looks completely disheveled when you're passing on 3rd and 2. You're bringing in Alex Orgy on 3rd and short. It's not like 1st and 10 or, maybe 2nd and 5, 2nd and 4, so that if he does fail, you have another down to change up things. You don't try and let him pass the ball. You don't let loose. There is not even, outside of the Alex Orgy package, really a trick play that Michigan ran, except for the flea flick or 2 on the drive where they actually got a field goal. You play very conservative. You play not to get blown out, and it's in your own home stadium with a fan base that is rabid, that still has high expectations. I mean, the Steve Dace opinion of, oh, well, we won the Natty, I don't think is as popular as maybe Twitter and some sectors on YouTube would lead you to believe. I don't. It was just, I look at the offense for Michigan, and I understand that, look, they're going to be good at running the ball, but they have to get better because USC could very well beat them. Oregon, if they get things figured out, will beat them. Washington on the road doesn't look like a lock to win anymore. And Ohio State will, I think, handily beat Michigan. And I don't think this is an overreaction either. I know that Texas on offense was way better than Michigan. They have one of the best offenses in the country. I even said that in the preseason. And the defense has clearly improved in a sense of being more balanced from last year. But Michigan's offense it really is, given the level of talent and how they've recruited. And I know that they're starting a walk-on at quarterback, and quarterback's important on offense. But we have seen teams that have limitations at QB that can still be good offensively. It's called having a great offensive line, having receivers that can compensate, having a tight end who can play well. And Loveland is that, but he didn't have a good game against Texas on Saturday. And just trying new things. Michigan in 2021 had Cade McNamara, and they had a good, great offense. And McNamara at Iowa has not done well. And at Michigan, he was simply above average good. Warren can be Cade McNamara if managed and coached properly. This offense can perform at a maybe just below 2021 level if coached properly. And as for Michigan's defense, they're more talented in my mind outside of probably Aiden Hutchinson. They're more talented on an average basis at every position than the 2021 defense, and they look worse. So, big win for Texas. This is not to discredit Texas at all. I still think Michigan is a good team, but they're good because their special teams is elite and because their defense may still be elite. It's certainly a near elite defense, and the offense just has enough pieces and talent on its own that they can do some things, I think, even with a quarterback who needs a lot of work, a wide receiver room that needs a lot of work, an O-line that's still young, and coaches who I don't think managed the game properly. We'll take a break after I get through week 2, and we're halfway through there. Marcus Freeman, I think Tom Fornelli said it the best on his Cover 3 podcast. This is the game that got Marcus Freeman fired. And you will look back on this in a few years, or maybe at the end of the year, though I doubt it. I bet it will be a few years. And when he's gone, you will look at this game as the inflection point. And the reason I say that is because, one, it's a loss to a MAC school, where the MAC school outgained you by 100 yards. They were tougher than you. They were more physical than you. They even had the more efficient passing game. It was just in every bit, and I mean every bit, not a good look. It was not a good look. I watched that game at the end, and I have to admit that I'll say this on this live because this is probably the most casual live stream I've done in a while, and I'm perfectly fine with that. I was pumping my fist, hoping that Northern Illinois would win this game, partially because as a Michigan fan, my team didn't do so well in week 2, and I needed another team to have an even worse loss than what Michigan had. And that's what happened with Notre Dame. The field goal at the end, where you're lining up for a 62-yarder, which would be by far Mitch Jeter's career long, and it gets blocked. It's not even close. It just blocked by Northern Illinois. Game over. They storm the field. Notre Dame Stadium gasps. Like, their fans are like this. And Notre Dame's players and coaches look very sad, and they should be very sad. Marcus Freeman has now lost at home as a big favorite to 3-9 Stanford, to a probably average Marshall team. Those are both in 2022. Got dominated on the road by a vastly inferior Clemson team in 2023. And in 2024, a year where with their schedule, they should have been a lock to the playoffs, so the year was a failure. They beat A&M. They're viewed as a top 5 team. And, well, you lose to Northern Illinois. I can't do it. This season has been awesome in terms of pure chaos, in terms of the tables being totally flipped. I mean, Michigan as a national champion from last year is not a top 10 team this year. Notre Dame may even be worse than last year. Texas is better than they were last year. Washington probably won't even be close to the college football playoff. And Washington, Michigan, Alabama, they didn't look good against USF. This is just a total chaos year. And I think there's another coach who's going to end this season. I never thought I would say this. Notre Dame, I think, will finish the year putting Marcus Freeman on the hot seat because Louisville looks better than them. Georgia Tech looks more physical and well put together than they do. And USC, even though I'm still not buying into their hype in terms of them being a top 10 team, I think they're easily top 20 right now, maybe top 15. USC will kill this team. USC will wear this defense down, and because Notre Dame doesn't have a passing game and their offensive line doesn't look good, Jeremiah Love is probably carrying their offensive line, and it's in the Coliseum, they'll probably handily beat Notre Dame and coach circles around them too. And then last but not least, what is wrong with Oregon? What's wrong with the Ducks? Final score in Eugene on Saturday night was Oregon 37, Boise State 34. I don't know what to tell you here. I still think that Oregon is going to do extremely well in the Big Ten because of how weak the conference looks. But in terms of national championship hopes, unless they get that offensive line fixed and unless Dylan Gabriel takes better care of the football and has more consistency and accuracy and diversity in the passing game, you can kiss those hopes goodbye. Ohio State should beat this team handily. Georgia would blow this team out. Texas would handily beat Oregon. And those are the top 3 teams by a mile right now. There are a few other teams who I think can still win it all, but they are a tier or 2 tiers below Ohio State, Texas, and Georgia. Those are my top 3. I think those should be the unanimous top 3. Against Boise State, and Boise State does have Ashton Jeanty, so they're going to run the ball effectively. Oregon surrendered 369 total yards of offense. They were outgained in that statistic by 16 total yards. They put up 353. They had 2 turnovers. they had 3 less first downs, and they had 2 special teams touchdowns, 2 of them. And that's because they're very athletic. But they're not going to pull that off in Big Ten play. You're not going to have Tez Johnson returning a 85-yard punt against Ohio State or Michigan or most of the Big Ten. You're not going to have Noah Whittington return a kickoff for 100 yards, or maybe it was Jaden Lamar. You're not going to have Trayshawn Holden hit a 60-yard bomb against Ohio State's secondary. And if Michigan gets things figured out in their secondary, it'll be the same thing there too. And that even goes with, like, Wisconsin, for example, whose problems remain on the defensive line, not in the secondary of their defense. Oregon held Meadow Madsen to 3.7 yards per pass attempt, and Boise State still ran for nearly 7 yards per carry. A big part of that's Ashton Jeanty, who I think is elite. But even the best of the best running backs can be limited, especially when the opposing defense is far more talented than their supporting cast. Oregon does have some issues stopping the run. They still have some issues running the ball. They especially have issues in pass protection, where Boise State, and they have a good defensive line, but they got 4 sacks, 7 TFLs. They have to figure their stuff out. And I'm only being harsh on them because they want to win the Big Ten, they want to compete for the Big Ten, and they want to compete for a national title. And this looks like a team who could get 10, 11 wins and not at all be competitive in those goals because their schedule doesn't look to be that strong. And there's one team on their schedule named Ohio State who looks to be that good and who could beat them by more than 2 scores in their own house right now if they wanted to. That's really that. I just wanted to blitz through that, especially since we started this show late. Didn't have too much time to cover all of those. But yeah, we're going to get to some super chats now and really blow this thing open. And thank you for the 40 concurrent views. Okay, so Baldfather Bets, thank you for the $20 super chat. Let me just make sure that you're up on my screen here. With how the season has gone, would you be surprised if the playoff was 6 SEC schools? Georgia, Texas, Tennessee, Mississippi, Alabama, Missouri, or another. 2 Big Ten teams, OSU, PSU, Oregon. 2 ACC teams, Miami and Clemson. And then 1 Big 12 and G5 team. Your super chat almost read my mind entirely. Some of you already saw my playoff bracket. Some of you didn't, because we just had some issues with production in the show early. Those 6 SEC teams are in my playoff bracket. Like, I have 6 SEC teams in my top 10 and in my playoff bracket. And I'm a Big Ten channel. Objectively, I said it in the preseason, the SEC's the better conference. I completely underestimated how much better they are than everyone else. Yes, there is some SEC bias, like in the fact that Auburn is clearly a work in progress. South Carolina sucks. Kentucky sucks. I don't know what to think of Vanderbilt. They're probably better than last year, but probably still not a great team. Arkansas is poorly coached, and I don't think they would be a top 3rd team in the Big Ten, for example, even though they'd probably do well in the Big 12 or ACC. Maybe they wouldn't win a lot of games, but they play in a lot of close games, lose a lot of close games due to the fact that Sam Pittman. I do have, though, one more Big Ten team than you suggest. And I don't have 2 ACC teams because I think that I have to see more from Clemson before I buy into them. And with how badly Clemson lost to Georgia, if they go 11-1 and then they play in the ACC championship game and Miami destroys them, which is possible, I don't think an 11-2 Clemson, if their only, ranked team they played all year was Georgia in the regular season, they played another ranked team in Miami in the ACC title game and they lost both of them, I don't think they'd get in over, Georgia, Texas, Tennessee, Ole Miss, Alabama, and Mizzou, who will all probably earn 10 or more wins looking at their schedule. Ohio State, Penn State, and Oregon will probably earn 10 wins or more each. Miami, I'd say right now, is on path to going 12-0, 11-1 in the regular season. And Utah should own the Big 12, but maybe they won't. I'm also tired, so keep that in mind. Let me... I'm just looking at some more of Bald Father Bet's comments. Yeah, exactly. And I rarely answer non-super chats this early just because, well, I don't have a ton of time and I want to, get to super chatters. I'll get to the $5 one I just received in a bit. But yeah, you said horrendous staff. That's exactly what I'm thinking. That's exactly what I'm thinking. It was just, it was mind-boggling watching that game. Like watching Wink Martindale never make adjustments. And I'm going to look more into Davis Warren because I think you may be right on that. I won't say, because I think I defended him a little bit yesterday or today from some people, though I also said that, like, he's not a great quarterback. But in the second half, he did make some impressive throws. And he did do some things that I think he was better against Texas than he was against Fresno State, for example. But it was just so frustrating to watch the play calling and then some of the misses that he had. I'm frustrated. I'm not being objective here, I confess, with Michigan tonight because I'm tired and yeah, we kind of got a late start, honestly. You say more will be gone quickly. I wonder if that's the case, and I find that to be so interesting because I thought he did a pretty darn good job coaching the offense. Obviously did a good job of coaching the offensive line, but we'll have to see because certainly if Harbaugh and his staff were coaching in that game, I, in hindsight, would probably pick Texas to win, but it would be a much closer game. And I know that for a fact. It would be a much, much closer game. Wink isn't also as bad as Brown, but he's also an issue. Yeah, he's Michigan's worst defensive coordinator, actually, since Don Brown. Yeah. Okay. And yeah. Yeah, because when we went live together, you said that game could go either Michigan or Texas close, or Texas would blow them out. And yeah, Michigan's staff played directly into the blowout win for Texas. That was the epitome of the 3rd and 2 pass, when you should run with Kalel Mullings, and you probably pick that up very easily. And I will look at that, and I hope that this staff figures out some things quickly, but I do think Michigan will probably make some staff moves after this year if Sharon Moore has gumption and is even capable of being a good head coach, and I think he is, but whether he actually is or not, we'll have to see. Wolvergeek, thank you for the $5 super chat. This Michigan team, especially after the Texas game, is reminding me more and more of the 2017 team. That's all I'm going to say, is I'm just going to sigh at that, because you're probably right there. And yeah, at Clemson, yeah, that 3rd and 2, when I saw that happen, like, even if he didn't throw the pick, at that point I'm like, yeah, this game's over. When you don't play to your roster, when you play so against your roster to the point where it's like, did you watch any film, or like, how come I feel like I know the roster more than you do? That just didn't make sense. That was a bad call. And part of that, I think, is, Kirk Campbell. He likes to be pass happy. If Moore wants to restore faith in his head coaching potential, what he has to do after this season, I mean, even unless some miracle happens, he needs to, like, shake up the coordinators, shake up the assistant coaches. Yeah, exactly. Mullings picks that up easily, and Michigan could have made it a game entering the half. Texas still wins, but, I don't think Michigan roster-wise is as bad as people want to believe. Texas is that good, but also Michigan, if they can't coach the team properly, it won't matter how talented the roster is. They just won't be good. And that's really that. Yeah. At this point, I'm going to move on. You'll hear more from me. More from me on Michigan, Oregon, especially those two teams in this week. Oregon State, there'll be a breakdown on that. Michigan is playing Arkansas State, but I still think they deserve a video that's not an Arkansas State versus Michigan preview and prediction. Ohio State and Penn State are on a bye. Same with USC, and I do want to talk about those teams as well. Thank you again for the super chats, all the concurrent viewership. Again, please like the show, subscribe if you haven't already. We've gained like 100 subscribers yesterday and also today. So this show is doing tremendously well. I'm still going to do the lives Monday and Wednesday. Some other stuff I want to get to is coming out slowly, but we're getting things worked out. And finally, last thing I'll answer from the chat are two things is, Bald Father bets. I still think Michigan's good. Y'all are going to see that in my top 25 power ratings. This team, I'm telling you, if they're coached properly, could be top 10. They probably can't win it all. I was probably a little, not misguided, but just under some false pretenses when I thought that Orgy was going to start, that they could win it all in the preseason, but they can still be a top 10 team. As for Chimichanga Guy, Filet-O-Fish, Iowa State might have the boom season you were predicting. If they take care of this easy early schedule, they'll be back in the Big 12 championship game. It's just, I got to be honest with you, most of my preseason predictions, outside of a few, are pretty much out the window, or they're on their last leg. And I don't even think I'm overreacting here. Like, I'm being cautious about dropping Michigan really, really low, like how some people want me to be. I'm not very high on USC still, like the national media is, and all these other things. But we'll get to that. But I think it's time to move on because I don't want to be on here for an hour 30, 2 hours in particular. So I want to show you my new top 25 power ratings. Week 2 is concluded. We now have 2 sample sizes. Or that doesn't make sense. Again, guys, I'm tired. We now have a 2-game sample size with week 1 and week 2 having concluded. And we're moving on to week 3. So I'm going to unveil my week 3 top 25 power rankings. This basically is who would do the best versus the best 25 or best 20 Power 4 teams. And you could limit it to the best 15, best 10, best 5, or you could just say which teams would do the best against Georgia, who's my number 1. I'm not even going to hide that. Or against Texas, if you disagree with that take. I think resume-wise, Texas should easily be number 1. But this is not resume-wise. This is power rankings-wise. Or if you think Ohio State, they have a strong argument to be number 1. I think just based off of how they looked against Western Michigan. Against Western Michigan, Ohio State looked identical to the Michigan of last year in terms of just their raw efficiency, their quickness, and the fact that they were just on top of the ball. So we're going to dive right in and jump right in to the deep end. And we're going to start with number 25. We saved the best for last on this channel. And we have Kansas at 25. Jalen Daniels looked awful against Illinois, but they still have a competent rushing offense. I think their defense, especially their defensive line, is underrated. Lance Leipold is a great coach, and I do have coaching factored into this. Kansas is 1-1. Illinois may actually be one of the tougher teams they play all year, depending on who Illinois is, and also what is Kansas's schedule and what is the Big 12, because they avoid Utah. They avoid Oklahoma State. They host Iowa State, and they travel on the road to Kansas State. But outside of that, I don't see much potential, room for teams that'll be favored over Kansas or just objectively better than Kansas. In order for Kansas to regress record-wise from last year and therefore be out of the Big 12 championship race, they'll have to be more upsets like this, where Kansas was a 4.5-point favorite. They lose basically on a Xavier Scott pick six, where Xavier Scott did in week 2 what Will Johnson did in week 1. He read a screen pass and just did a video game move in NCAA 14 where just comes right across the route, picks it off, runs it back to the house. I got Boston College at 24. I have no clue how good or bad Florida State is. I suspect that they're pretty bad. And Duquesne is Duquesne. But Boston College has strong lines of scrimmage. I think Bill O'Brien's a good coach. Thomas Castellanos looks like he's upgraded from last season as a passer. And I think that this team is going to be scrappy. I do not believe they can really get higher than this. But they play Missouri this week, and I would not be shocked if them and Missouri get in a little bit of a physicality matchup. They get into a little bit of a wrestling match. Oklahoma's at 23rd. Oklahoma's 2-0. Boston College is as well. But Oklahoma only beat Houston 16-12, and Houston nearly got shut out by UNLV. And in their week 1 game against Temple, Oklahoma could not throw, could not run to save their life relative to expectations, relative to expected performance, because Temple's a bad football team. So the fact that they weren't able to generate many explosive plays and they kicked a ton of field goals, they forced a just unreal amount of turnovers and didn't put up more than 50 points. Oklahoma, I think, is clearly regressed from last year. And talk about Oklahoma's quarterback room. What a misread by the majority of the nation. I was right in the preseason on Jackson Arnold, I think, being somewhat overrated, but I was also wrong on Dylan Gabriel. He's not a top 10 quarterback right now. And Gabriel going to Oregon and struggling a bit, some of it may be chemistry, some of it may also be the fact that he is not Bo Nix. And then Jackson Arnold with a banged-up receiver room, an offensive line that's just not gelling together, but he still has talent. And he has a running back room, and when his wide receiver room is healthy, it's one of the best in the SEC. This offense still can't get going. They are going to struggle in SEC play. They're 2-0. They better get some wins and earn them quickly. That game against Tennessee is going to be big. LSU is 1-1. I'm going to keep it simple. They lost to a USC team who I respect, who I think is improved, but they did not look good in the secondary in that game, and they didn't look good again against Nichols in the secondary. This defense is not fixed. It's better than last year, but last year's defense was pretty bad. I think it's a similar story at USC. The defenses for LSU and USC are improved. They are far from fixed. They are far from complete units, and you will see that when they play offenses, whether those offenses are good or bad, that have a non-negotiable strength or a potent part, a potent unit on the offensive side of the ball, will expose LSU's defense. And they have a game against South Carolina in week 3, and South Carolina doesn't have much of an offense, but maybe South Carolina's offense will shine against an LSU defense that just doesn't look all that good. Louisville at 21, they haven't played anyone, but they look impressive. FPI likes them. Tyler Show looks very efficient, and they returned a lot on defense from 2023. So they're at 21. At 20, we have Boise State. Boise State impressed me a ton against Oregon. I am also lower on Oregon than I was, but I think I have to compliment that with the fact that Boise State, I believe, is better than I think. I mean, they gave up 45 points to Georgia Southern. They have some issues on defense, but that offense is very good. They have some underrated receivers. They're strong, I think, at the lines of scrimmage. And honestly, the difference between team number 20 and team number 40 is probably less than a touchdown. Like, this is right now one of the most chaotic seasons that I can remember. One of the most chaotic. If you want to argue that Boise State isn't even top 30, I'm not going to argue with you there or say that you're wrong. I'm just not going to. But they have Ashton Jeanty. I think Matt O'Madsen did kind of have a bad game against Oregon. Also backslash that with the point that I think Oregon's secondary is not the problem on their defense. I think it's closer to their defensive line and linebacker core than it is their secondary. And defensively, maybe they were looking ahead because they have to travel all the way from Idaho to Georgia to play Georgia Southern, who's coached by Clay Helton, an air raid guy. And maybe they were looking ahead to Oregon. We'll just have to see, but I kind of got that feeling when I'm rewatching or just watching for the first time since I don't have Peacock, that Oregon-Boise State game. At 19th, I have Kansas State. Escaped Tulane, got a win over an FCS team in week 1. I just think that that's Kansas State's identity. They're not going to be blowing teams out, but they're also hiding Avery Johnson a bit. I like DJ Giddens. I still like the offensive line, and I think they're going to rebound. 18th, I have Iowa State. It may not make sense that I have them below Iowa, but again, this is power rankings. I believe that if these two teams matched up again in Kinnick Stadium, Iowa probably wins. I think neutral field, I would slightly lean Iowa to win. Probably like 51 out of 49 times, or 51 out of 100 times neutral field. It'd be very, very close. But I do think that Iowa State did, they got big plays on Iowa. Iowa got big plays on them too. But I do think, looking what I watched in that game, pretty evenly matched teams. It's just at the end of the day, the more balanced offense won. And this is the story with Iowa's defense every year since 2021. They have one or two breakdowns. They lose. It's just what happens. And I think Iowa's offensive line looks much better than it has. Best offensive line I believe that Iowa's had since either 2021 or 2020. Iowa State and Iowa. Iowa State's 2-0. Iowa is 1-1. I think these teams will do well with their schedules. I think that Iowa State is the more diverse team than Iowa. They probably at this point have the higher ceiling than Iowa, but I also think Iowa has the much higher floor. At 16th, I have the Clemson Tigers. This is a total look. It's week 2. I'm just going based off of FPI, the data, the fact that I think Georgia's the number 1 team in the country, and that even though App State has issues defensively, Clemson just came out and put a bunch of points on them like it was nothing and had a super efficient game. So that shows me they have potential, and I love potential, especially this early in the season. And power rankings care a lot more about potential than the AP Top 25 or Coaches Poll Top 25, which are basically you are what your record says you are, combined with a little bit of strength of schedule and, conference biases, whether those biases are earned or not. At 15th, I have the USC Trojans. 11 through 15 is all Big Ten teams because I still think the Big Ten's a good conference, but man, oh man, it really is Ohio State and Penn State, and I think everyone else. USC's at 15th at 2-0. They shut out Utah State, but Utah State is not good. They nearly lost their week 1 game to, I forget the name of the school, but not a good school. And their coach got fired like right before the season began. Like just a few months, I think even maybe a few weeks before the season began due to some type of investigation. And LSU does not look impressive. I mean, Nichols averaged about the same amount of passing yards per attempt on LSU's secondary that USC did. And that offensive line against an LSU defense that is suspect didn't look good either in Las Vegas. I have them at 15th because, again, I'm reacting to whatever information I can and basically am throwing out my preseason top 25 to a large degree. Not entirely, because I think that's an overreaction, but I am throwing bits and pieces of it out, and a lot of it out. That's why, for example, Oregon has not, they haven't lost a game and they're 11th. USC hasn't lost a game, and I didn't have them in my preseason top 25. I predicted them to shut out Utah State in the preseason because I wanted to do score predictions and I didn't finish them. But I had them beating Utah State by like 50 points. So in my mind, it's not an impressive win. And people are treating it like it's an impressive win. They're treating LSU like a top 5 team based off of how they're rating USC. I'm telling you, when USC travels to Michigan, that's going to be a test for USC. It will not be this blowout win for the Trojans like some people think. When USC hosts Penn State right now would get big play after big play on that defense, and they would be able to grind that defense into the dirt. Not because D'Antonlin's a terrible DC. He's, I think, a top 10, top 5 DC. But it takes more than a year to fix what Alex Grinch basically kicked, dragged, and killed for 2 years in a row. Takes more than a year to fix that. That's why I don't have them higher than 15th. Rutgers at 14th, 2-0. Very strong run game, very good defense. Ultimately, that's about it because Ethan Kaliakmanis exists. Michigan at 13th is similar to Rutgers. They don't have the same type of running back. They have a higher ceiling on defense and honestly probably a higher ceiling on offense than Rutgers does. Michigan, Rutgers, and Iowa are similar. Rutgers is a higher ceiling version of Iowa. In general, Michigan is a higher ceiling version of Rutgers and Iowa. All of these teams have anywhere from bad to about average QB play. Their rushing attacks are much stronger than their passing attacks, and their defenses have like serious top 10, top 5 potential. Michigan and Iowa especially. Rutgers, I don't know if they have top 5 potential on defense, but that's the gist of the Big Ten. Nebraska and Oregon are only ahead of Michigan, Rutgers, and USC because they both have, at least I think, a defense that isn't totally a paper tiger. In the case of Oregon, Oregon also has high-octane talent everywhere on the field, and they're still dealing with some injuries on the offensive line. So I think Oregon has concerns on O-line really as it relates to depth. I guarantee you with some of their starters back, though, they'll perform better. Still a big concern, though, just like with Alabama's offensive line. Nebraska and Oregon have QB play. USC does too, but I don't trust USC's trench play. I trust Nebraska's defensive line. Oregon, I have to admit I'm giving them a little bit of benefit of the doubt. But I do think that Oregon has a better defensive line than USC, and they have a lot more potential on the offensive line than USC does. Yeah. Also, I'm not giving up on Oregon yet. This year has been very chaotic. I don't want to overreact. If I ranked Oregon just based off of how they've performed in 2 weeks, they probably wouldn't even be top 15 because they haven't played anyone, and their average margin of victory is 6.5 points. At number 10, I have Miami. They're 2-0. Same with Tennessee. All these teams are 2-0. Miami at 10, Tennessee at 9, Utah at 8, Ole Miss at 7th, Missouri at 6th. You name it. I think all of these teams have great defenses, great offenses. They're elite on one of those. All of them, I think, have anywhere from good to elite quarterback play. And Tennessee is a defense, man. The way they bullied NC State, and it was a defensive and rushing attack bullying. Nico Iamaleava threw 2 touchdowns and also 2 interceptions. He didn't throw for 500 yards and 5 touchdowns. That was Tennessee's defense and rushing attack that won that game 51-10. Miami, if they continue to play like how they've played and be efficient, maybe they could be in that national championship conversation. Right now, though, I think it's Ole Miss and Missouri at 7th and 6th, and Alabama at 5th, Penn State at 4th, Texas at 3rd, Ohio State at 2nd, and Georgia at 1. Those 7 teams, 5 of whom are in the SEC, I think have the capability to win it all. Those are my 7 teams who I think can win the national championship game. As of who you want to rank 1, 2, and 3, I think it's unanimously got to be Georgia, Ohio State, and Texas. Those are clearly the 3 best teams in the country. Penn State has the capability of leapfrogging one of those teams, but I have to see it against a great team, and I have to just see James Franklin achieve that big win before I can do that. I really do. But Georgia, I have at number 1 because they were my preseason national title pick, and the way they beat Clemson was, I don't think as impressive as the way Texas beat Michigan, but I do think that Georgia still is the better coaching staff than Texas. I think they have the better overall roster, the better trench play. I do think they are the better team. I see that a lot of people have a lot of problems with this list. Is that true? Again, this is casual. I'm not going to be re-uploading this to my YouTube channel. I'm not going to. I'm not going to do the cuts that I typically do just because we started out very late. I'm going to redo a lot of this, guys, and then do that. Like re-record some of this and then release that for tomorrow, because I didn't even plan on any of this being more than 10-minute segments. But it is what it is. That right there is my top 25. And from here, I think I'm just going to be pretty casual about this stream, just be chill, not be too anxious or anything, because I really appreciate you guys for coming on. If you have any super chats, fire them out, because I'll get to those immediately, but I'll even read some of the normal comments, a lot of them. I see that P, longtime viewer of the channel and Tennessee fan, said that Oklahoma won't even have 200 yards in their own stadium. When that game rolls around, I may not do a preview and prediction for it because I'm mainly Big Ten. I'm straight up telling you, Tennessee would destroy Oklahoma right now. It would not be close. It would not be close. I'm here telling you, I would take, and I know you all saw Nebraska. I didn't talk about it much, but I have them ranked ahead of Michigan, power rated. Nebraska would beat Oklahoma in their own home stadium. And that is something that I don't think the college football world ever thought would be uttered again in like 1,000 years because of how bad Nebraska's been. Let me see. Chimichanga guy talked about how Georgia should have won 70-0, but won 34-3. Yeah. Just looking at some more of this stuff. Baldfather Bet says, told you Kansas is in it. Yeah, it's quarterback, because their rushing offense is really good. I mean, Kansas has the offensive line to not have a passing offense and still run all over people. Like, they have a good offensive line and a really good running back room, which is why I still think they'll win games even after that performance. But man, oh man, that looked rough. P, I would pick Mizzou to beat Tennessee on a neutral field because I think Missouri has a better offense. And Missouri's defense, I know they haven't played anyone, but NC State didn't look good on offense either. Missouri's defense has looked great, even given the level of competition they've played against. And I've been high on Missouri for quite some time. Again, I want to stress this. This is not what Vegas thinks. This is not the JP poll. This is a power rating similar to the JP poll in that way, but it's how I see what the odds should be in my mind. This is not Vegas power poll, or me trying to guess what Vegas power poll is, or what Vegas power poll. This is what I think Vegas power poll should be in my mind. Peter Latham with the $2 super chat. Thank you very much. MSU will beat Iowa. It was close last year with Barnett. With the fact that Iowa's cornerbacks are not as good as they have been, and Michigan State is like finding ways to get explosive plays, I can't disagree with you there. Will I pick that to happen? Am I picking that to happen now? I'm not going to say necessarily, because Michigan State's also turning over the ball a ton, and Iowa will take advantage of that. It's not like they're turning it over like Iowa State did, where they turned it over once. Michigan State's turning it over like 3 times per game, and they're averaging over 10 penalties per game. Iowa will beat a team that does that no matter what talent they have. Unless it's like Georgia, who, if Georgia turned it over 3 times and had 100 yards in penalties, well, they'd still crush Iowa. But MSU's not even close to Georgia. Thank you for the $2 super chat. I appreciate it a lot. Yeah, Larry IZPR0. Yeah, college football nerds, they're geniuses. That's another part of the reason I'm high on Tennessee. Is I just get some of my advice from them, from FPI. As the year goes on, guys, that's really when I start to, like, I think, separate myself more and more. I'm just right now being not overreacting, but it's hard to kind of not overreact when the amount of upsets that have occurred is just so great in volume. Thank you, Marcus, for appreciating me. Baldfather Bet says, I'm curious on your Tennessee-Michigan take. By that, did you mean, like, why I have Tennessee ranked ahead of Michigan? Or am I reading TN wrong? Marcus Sutton also says, I couldn't put Penn State that high yet. I can, because Penn State, with explosive play capability and the talent they have on defense, and the fact that in watching their Bowling Green game, I do think that was a fluke. I don't know, man. If there's one team to beat Ohio State in the Big Ten, it's Penn State. It is. The way they looked against West Virginia in week 1, they played a good offensive line. Wait, how did West Virginia do in their how'd they do in their week 2 game? I heard they didn't do well, but there's a difference between they don't do well and their O-line sucks and their offense sucks versus they don't do well and it's their okay. They beat Albany 49-14, but they allowed 2 oh my gosh. Well, that's their secondary. I think that actually shows that, yeah, Penn State's passing attack may be a little overrated even by myself. But they put up over 500 yards. They had a turnover. Oh, my gosh. Albany won the TOP battle. But West Virginia ran the ball for nearly 10 yards per carry, and Albany only had a sack and a TFL. So I do think Penn State, their defense had a flukish game against Bowling Green. The offense, I think, did as well. Penn State went from having one of the best week 1 performances to having just a bad week 2 performance, but it was better than it was better than Notre Dame's, for example. You notice Notre Dame wasn't in my top 25 power poll because when you lose to NIU and then A&M has started to consistently look bad on offense and you don't have a passing game, I mean, Michigan would probably beat Notre Dame like 16-0 right now if I were to have to pick. It would be just this complete toxic fest where the game's never out of reach, but they just can't quite grasp it. That's what Notre Dame NIU even was. They only got 2 touchdowns, and NIU just kicked 3 field goals and scored a long TD on a fluke play. I mean, at this point, Notre Dame's Iowa. Heck, they're worse. They're worse than Iowa. Iowa actually has a competent offensive line that can create big plays. Notre Dame can't even do that. It's just insane. Oh, Tennessee and Mizzou. So your Baldfather Bets your you said Mizzou. Oh, okay. I see. I mean, I gotta confess, because I can't watch every game. I haven't watched a bunch of Mizzou, but I know they have Luther Burden. I know they have Brady Cook. They returned like the most production in the SEC. And let me see their wins right now. I know that Brady Cook has not looked phenomenal, but they haven't played anyone, and they've shut out 2 of their opponents, and they've gotten like over 500 yards in both those games. Like they look uber efficient. They do. I mean, and Brady Cook by QBR is having a pretty darn good year. Let me see FPI. Yep, Mizzou's top 10 in FPI. I would pick him to beat USC. What are they in S&P Plus by Bill Connolly? Oh man. Well, Michigan's 13th. Bill Connolly has them right where I do. Views their offense as terrible. Didn't really penalize their defense all that much after that Texas game, which I think is very fair. He has Missouri 7th. He has them just 0.1 points behind Tennessee. And I think Tennessee may be a little overinflated by that NC State game because NC State's offense has looked pretty bad against West Carolina. But I do think Tennessee's a top 10 team. And I have them actually going 10-2 now and participating in the college football playoff. Which I'll actually show you guys that right now. Here's my playoff bracket. And again, this is live, this is casual. There will be a much more professional, crisp, probably 10, maybe 15-minute video out tomorrow detailing this. It actually just automatically went through it all. But I have Tennessee as my 11th seed in the playoff with a 10-2 record. And then everyone else outside of Tennessee and probably, well, I don't know about Boise State. Boise State, I think, will probably lose another game. Maybe, maybe not. But I think they'll win the Mountain West. And with that close Oregon L, I think they'll get in. Everyone outside of Tennessee, I actually have only earning one loss, which is just like what I had in the preseason. And I think that's because Georgia and Bama will handle their tough schedules. Ole Miss, Missouri, and Tennessee have pretty workable schedules. Same with Texas now that Michigan's out of the way and A&M looks pretty bad. Oregon has a workable schedule. Granted, they get things right. Penn State has a pretty easy schedule. Ohio State's isn't easy, but I think they'll work it. And Miami's is cupcake. That's a cupcake level schedule. And I think Utah wins the Big 12. Larry, thank you for the $5 super chat. USC win versus LSU is looking suspect. As a PSU fan, U of M versus USC will be telling for me if USC has truly become a physical team. LSU lost so much on O. Yeah, they're not as good on offense. More importantly, I think their defense is still bad. And FPI is telling you that they're overrated. FPI is by like rankings, as in strength of record rankings, that they're a joke. But you shouldn't even be reading FPI by strength of record rankings. LSU is currently 20th in FPI. They would not even be picked to win the Big 12. They would not be picked to win the ACC either, and I wouldn't pick them either. Brian Kelly also getting on one of his players. I just, whatever at that point. It's like, be careful. Don't lose the locker room. Just don't do it. You're at this point a better coach than Marcus Freeman, Deion Sanders, Sam Pittman, but don't. This team with this schedule could go 7-5, and at that point we're talking about another coach on the hot seat. So just don't, like, come on, man, get your team together. But yeah, I think that win looks suspect. I think a lot of people who really do. I mean, even on Cover 3, I think they're overhyping USC, but they mentioned how they're a little concerned too. They want to see USC play another big game, and I think that game against Michigan is important. Okay, thank you for that $5 again. I appreciate it a lot. And let me know if you guys prefer these casual streams, because if you guys do, I will still, like, again, today was an exception to the rule. I'll still clip these and release them the following day, but what I'll probably do is, like, half serious, half casual. I can answer your questions, get to your super chats, all that different stuff. P. Mizzou needed overthrow Joe, and the game was close until the fourth last year. People low on Tennessee are only thinking of Joe Milton from last year. Yeah, I'm not low on Tennessee. Not anymore. Not anymore. CK Cash 26 $5 super chat. Thank you for all the videos. I listen to all of them while I'm at work, even teams I don't usually quote care about. GBR. Thank you very much for the $5 super chat. I'm glad you appreciate all the videos because I'm trying to pump them out on a daily basis. Really. Like I say, live Monday and Wednesday. and soon to be some other things, like I'm displaying with these playoff predictions and top 25 stuff. That'll be consistent. And videos every day. And live streaming the big games, of course. Okay. Last but certainly not least, it is 10 p.m. I've been live on here for nearly an hour. I just quickly want to jump back. And, there, it's already reminding you to like, share, subscribe, and click the notification bell. If you all could do that, I'd appreciate it a lot. And if you want to support the channel in an extra way, many of you are. But if you want to do something else, you can visit the Patreon page via the link in the description or patreon.com/CFB with Sam. Here are my Big Ten power rankings and also record projections. Let me know if you officially hate me after this segment. I have Ohio State at 1, Penn State 2, Oregon 3, Nebraska 4, Michigan 5, Rutgers 6, USC 7, Iowa 8th, Illinois 9th, MSU 10th, Wisconsin 11th, Indiana 12th, Washington 13th, Minnesota 14th, Maryland 15th, Purdue 16th, Northwestern 17th, and UCLA 18th. Those are my power rankings. I mean, UCLA almost got shut out by Hawaii. Horrible. That was a absolute atrocity. Did I just get another? I got another super chat, didn't I? Yeah. Okay, I'm going to quickly read this. Thank you, Bald Father Bets, again for the $10 super chat. Yeah, guys, Adam is going to be on here I'm going to try and get him on here pretty frequently. We won't be able to do every week just because of, well, this is a primarily Big Ten channel. He covers NFL, college football. Check out his channel. I'm trying to follow his channel more just to get a feel for betting. I'm not a particular betting guy as of right now. Oh, thank you, P, for joining the Discord. Honestly, it's awesome that we have a Tennessee fan in there. Probably our first, hopefully not our last. But yeah, check out Bald Father Bets, guys. He'll be on here against just because mainly a variety of things. I tend to share a lot on this channel, perhaps too much. But he'll be on pretty frequently because he's done a pretty good job at analyzing games. In week 2, he made more educated and better picks than I did. So take from that what you will. He did very good in 2022 and 2023 with predicting games and point spreads and betting. Thank you for the $10 super chat, and I will see you soon, Adam. We'll have him likely on the channel, probably, just have to confirm it, in the next 2 weeks. So that'll be exciting. It's always good to talk football with him. Thank you again for the $10 super chat, Bald Father Bets. And go Longhorns. Go Longhorns. Hook 'em. I will be rooting for them in every game or every game with maybe an exception depending on how some things bounce for the rest of the year. I'm hoping they do phenomenally well. And I have to bring this up even though it's not a super chat. Sub to Chimichanga Guy for drum videos. Yeah, guys, if you're interested in music and drums, which, I mean, I got to confess I'm not, but I'm still subscribed to Chimichanga Guy because he's supported me on Patreon, and more important than that, he's just been active, and he brings insightful comments, and he's committed to this channel. So subscribe to him if you're interested in music and if you're interested in drums and all that different good stuff. But yeah, this is my Big Ten power rankings. I wonder if any of you have any disagreements. Kevin Chavis says Nebraska's not a top 12 team. Okay, if any of you are still whether it is if P is still on here, if Bald Father Betts is still on here, if Chris Lane's on here, if Armand Hammer is still on here, all of you actually, because I think our community is very knowledgeable. I'm going to tell you where I would rank Nebraska, Michigan, Rutgers, USC, and Oregon. teams of this year, where I would rank them if I were to take last year's top 25, like my power rankings from last year at the end of the season. Where would I rank these teams? Oregon, as it stands right now, they're 11th in my current top 25. I got to be honest with you, I'd probably rank them at, just looking at my top 25 from 2023, the final one, I would rank them at about 17, 18, 19. Like about where I put Arizona and Kansas. Arizona being a team that got big plays, had a good quarterback. I think last year's Fafita is way better than this year's Gabriel as of this current moment. This year's Fafita is a little bit of a different story. But Arizona was a team that had a lot of high-octane juice, but ultimately was not like this elite team, and not even near elite. They were just great, and that's what I think Oregon is right now. Nebraska at 12th, they'd be around the same category, but obviously lower than Oregon. I'd put them about, where Kansas and Louisville are, 18th, 19th. For Michigan, I'd probably be the same thing, honestly, based off of what I'm seeing from Michigan this year. For Rutgers, I would put Rutgers of this season probably where Texas A&M was last year. So I think from Michigan to Rutgers, there's a little bit of a drop-off compared to Oregon, Nebraska, and Michigan, who all three of whom I think are very close together. And then with USC, it's the same thing. USC, I would have in a similar position to Rutgers, around last year's A&M, Miami, Maryland, better than Oklahoma State, who I had at 25th. But all those teams are top 15, and I wouldn't even have them in last year's top 15. I think this year, part of it's week 2 and the fact that everything's chaotic, I think this is a down year in football compared to last year, which didn't have a 2020 Bama, 2001 Miami, 95 Nebraska, probably didn't even have a 2005 Texas caliber team, just to shout out Baldfather Betts, or probably didn't have they didn't have a 2019 Ohio State caliber team. Michigan last year would not have beaten 2019 Ohio State from a power ranking standpoint. Coaching, I don't know. Michigan last year is probably better coached than Ohio State was in 2019. But from just a raw potential, 2019 Ohio State would beat Michigan of last year. But while there wasn't that GOAT caliber team, as in like top 5 team of college football history of the past 50 years, Michigan is one of the better teams of all time if you expand it to, fact they're 15-0, expand it to the top 10, top 15 teams the past 50 years. And Washington was very underrated, low ceiling, but very high floor. Ohio State, I think, is better than what people will remember them to be. Oregon, same way. Georgia, same way. And Bama and Texas, while not like elite, they had that high ceiling. They did. When Texas and Bama were playing to their ceiling, they were up there, to say the least. And Penn State, if Penn State just had Andy Kotelnicki last year, they probably would have been at that Texas, Alabama, heck, even Georgia regular season level. But they had Mike Yurcich, and they had James Franklin dipping his fingers into the cookie jar. And terrible things happen when James Franklin dips his fingers into the cookie jar. He no longer covers spreads. He no longer wins games. He blows leads. That's what happens when James Franklin gets his fingers into the cookie crumbles. His team crumbles. Let me see. Colby Vlach, I wish we weren't ranked, to be honest. It's not that I think it's unreasonable for them to be there. I just want us to be in hunter mode going into the Illinois game. Yeah, if you guys lose to Illinois, which is totally possible, and I love Nebraska, it'd be hard for me to not laugh, because it's Brett Bielema picking up another ranked win with the team that would probably lose to Georgia by 50 points. It's just, it would be classic Big Ten West, so how couldn't I laugh? As for Big Ten record predictions, then we'll get out of here. I got Penn State still beating Ohio State and going 12-0 in the regular season, but losing to them in the rematch. So Ohio State wins the Big Ten, 12-1, 8-1. I actually have Oregon. This is funny and shows you why scheduling, especially with these super conferences, matters. I have Oregon as a way worse team. Like, I think last year's Oregon beats this year's Oregon by, like, multiple touchdowns. They look better coached, better prepared, and just better overall. Like last year's team does compared to this year's team. And yet I'm predicting them to have an identical record because I don't have faith that Michigan's going to beat them with how they coached and also with the fact that they're not as diverse, not as balanced. I think Ohio State will dominate them, but I think they'll beat everyone else, whether in close fashion or if they, hit their second, third, fourth, fifth gear, they could dominate everyone else. They even have the potential to beat Ohio State because Ohio State showed us in week 1 that they're not invincible. And that's hard for any team to show you, but again, it's only week 2. I think Ohio State's one of the best teams in the country, easily the best team in the Big Ten, but that doesn't mean that will remain the case. Remember, Ohio State in 2021, at the end of 2021, looked close to unbeatable outside of Georgia. Like, their defense was, still a little shaky, but it looked much better than earlier, and their offense was by far the best in the country. And then Michigan crushed them. So I'm not going to overreact too much here. I'm still sticking to my Penn State prediction. I still think Michigan will go 7-2. They could even go 8-1 in Big Ten Conference play still. I'm just having them lose to Oregon and Ohio State. I have Iowa. I'm sticking to my guns on Iowa still being a 10-win, double-digit win team. I think they'll beat everyone else except for Ohio State. Nebraska, I upgraded to 10 wins. I still have Rutgers going 10-2, just beating Wisconsin and losing to USC. I have USC going 9-3. I said in the preseason to not listen to my prediction that USC would go 5-7, and yeah, you see why now. Because USC's schedule went, I think, from being one of the tougher ones in the nation, from my preseason angle, which was wrong, to being pretty easy. Notre Dame's not any good. From what I can tell, Michigan's good, but they're beatable, especially given how vulnerable that secondary looked against a speedy receiver core and a great QB. USC has those, plus a defense that can probably make a one-dimensional offense pay. Wisconsin looks bad. Minnesota looks worse. Penn State's not invincible. And they beat LSU. Now, granted, the reason I'm not having them go 10-2 or 11-1, and they very well can, heck, with how the teams on their schedule look, they could go 12-0, I think, because they have that high octane potential and they have the talent and they may even have the coaching staff now. But I'm not completely sold because remember, I predicted them to beat LSU and Utah State. And then after going 2-0, finishing 3-7 because their schedule was very tough. They do not have the trench players to dominate the Big Ten. They have the trench players, in fact, to be dominated by the Big Ten. And I still think that largely applies here. I actually wouldn't be shocked if they still go 7-5 or 8-4. That wouldn't surprise me at all. But I'm just, what I have to do is adjust to the information that I have. And USC does look better than I expected them to by a little bit. It's more so the fact that everyone else on their schedule looks far worse than I expected. Indiana, I have them going 8-4. Illinois 7-5, MSU 6-6, Wisconsin, Washington, Minnesota, Maryland, Purdue, UCLA, and Northwestern. I do have missing a bowl game, finishing sub 500. Gosh, this is one of our more successful shows ever in terms of super chat, likes, and viewers. Thank you all so much for that. Oh, Franklin Fanatic, another account I like, similar to Ryan Day's Beard, with the funny name and the gosh, who is that in the profile photo? Gosh, Key and Peele. Yes, Key and Peele. Keegan Michael Key. That's who that is. He impersonated James Franklin, did a very good job. It was pretty funny. Yeah. Thank you guys so much for being on this stream. It just says that's James Franklin. That's hilarious. Interesting question. Michigan State over Indiana. Fatboy44 says that will change soon. Indiana, they looked good against, I forget who that was, but they were not a good team last year, that FCS team. And they did look a little suspect against Florida International, who's not good. Bald Father Betts said Ohio State was great last year. Yes. And would you have this year's Iowa team over last year's? Easily. McNamara looks about as bad as he did last year, factoring in both games, but it looks like they're better at receiver, and they're definitely better on the O-line and better at running back. They may be worse in defense. They're probably worse in pass defense, but I wouldn't say they're worse in run defense. And I think their defense will still be about as good, if not better, than last year's. Iowa State has one of the best passing offenses in the Big 12. Like, Beck's a good QB, and Jalen Noel and Jaden Higgins are wicked wide receivers. Kevin Chavis, there's a hilarious video of Chi posting as James Frank. Oh, he removed it. Let me see. They are huge. I've watched them. They're like a Big Ten team, like better than, did you say most? Or what did you mean by that? Yes, USC gained weight, but I still have a hard time believing that like in one season you can fix everything. That's not how college football works. That's never how anything has worked. Nick Saban was the best coach of all time. And he went 7-6 at Alabama in his first year. He straight up did. USC does not have everything fixed in 1 year. That's impossible. And I will die. I will die on that fact. It is impossible to fix everything in 1 year. This team may reach the playoff because they'll play limited opponents and maybe they can be a great team. But the end result of this team being in the playoffs will be like every other Lincoln Riley result. They will get destroyed outside of the 2017 Rose Bowl where they should have won, but they didn't. 2025 and beyond, though, and I said this even a few months ago, I'm pretty high on USC because 2 years into D'Anton Lynn's system with his recruiting, development, all the assistants they hired, plus Riley's offensive acumen and the fact that Miller Moss returns. Why wouldn't he return? I mean, maybe he is a one and done, but I think why wouldn't you return, especially when you should be better at everything in 2025? USC then will have unlocked another gear. Thank you all again so much for watching this show. We will be on Wednesday, and I am trying to get more guests on. Like, you'll see Adam Baldfather Betts on here. I'm going to try and get more guests on here. I'll have Johnny Olden Jr. back on here. If he can come on, Corn Crazed will be on at times throughout the season. I'm going to try and make the live shows like have guests here and there for y'all. Thank you so much, and I will see you guys very soon.